speaker, Mr. Jomon Rajan. So let's introduce him. Uh, Jomon Rajan is the senior programmer, a program manager at the Cyber, a US-based cyber security product startup, and in cyber security professional with over 12 plus year of experience in the core security technology domain, includes cyber fusion, security, threat intelligence. Jomon sir drives technology implementation and heads customer success for the India and APSC region at the Cyber. He is deeply involved in the cyber security community, serving as the head of Null Mumbai chapter, a speaker at Triple IT and the Computer Society of the India, an active contributor to cyber FIFC to advance cyber security practices. I welcome Mr. Jomon Rajan for the delivering the session. Please, sir.
Uh, Thank you so much, Ravi sir, for the brief introduction. I truly appreciate AICTE and Ravi sir for giving me this platform, so that I could share my experiences. And definitely, it's a privilege to speak, in front of such a big team of faculty. I always consider that everyone hearing me are way experienced, way knowledgeable, and I hope that this session be interactive. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Uh, Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, sir. Visible.
Is it in the slideshow mode?
Yes,
Yep.
slideshow mode. Yes.
Yep. Thank you. All right. So I just got to know from Ravi sir that this is probably the last session of this entire workshop, probably the
Yes.
curtain downer. And I'm sure that in this over a week of time, you would have gained a lot of knowledge from, well-renowned, industry experts and, professors out there. And I know it's a big task that has been shouldered on me so that I bring into this, this big workshop. I have to bring in, stories and tales around from a defender's perspective. And I'm happy that I got this topic because it's something that I can just take you guys through as a story so that everything that you guys have learned in bits and parts could be stitched together. And when you go back, you know why you have learned all of this together and how you can practically implement it. And also, a double-edged sword to understand how it is important to, to not just learn, but implement in your day-to-day operations. Coming to the topic, it's cybersecurity tales. My name is Jomon. I deal with threat intelligence and security automations and orchestration, and we primarily focus on getting, a lot of things automated so that, human intel can be used somewhere else. So, okay, yeah, I gave a brief of who I am. So as Sir just correctly mentioned, I work as a senior program manager at Cyber Labs, and I primarily head the India and SARC region. I head the technical function for program management, building strategy of operations, and also maintain SOC operations. And you can see the Twitter and LinkedIn handles over here. So definitely you feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or do you want to connect in the near future. So as I mentioned earlier, right, in today's session, what we are going to do is we are going to deep dive into various stories or various tales from a security perspective. And not just takes tales, but what we also try to do is we'll get into the nitty-gritties of it, understand the methodologies, understand the objectives, and wherever possible, I would like to throw in some live examples. If I'm not able to pull in live examples, I also have pre-recorded certain videos so that, you know, if time permits, I'll play those videos so that you can correlate to those on the fly and frequently. And not just learning tales or hearing tales, right? But I would also like to give you all a few takeaways wherein you guys would be able to go back home with certain methodologies that you guys can, you know, probably implement in your operations or probably share with your colleagues who are in their day-to-day operations. And we also know that with the increasing computing capacity, right, and AI coming in, we also know that there is requirement for advanced defense. So in conclusion, I will also stitch together how an AI can be used in defense technologies, how you can leverage AI to expedite or multiply your defense methodology 10x, 20x, so that that can be practically implemented everywhere. And then we'll, you know, in the tail end of the session, we'll also hit upon will the flows will be open for questions, and we could probably answer things that you want to address into. Okay. So, Ravi sir, just one thing. I have a constant pop-up coming up on my screen. I think there's a lot of people trying to join in. So
No,
that's
no.
yeah.
If one second.
Yeah,
I'll
if you
check.
can. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yes. Thank you. So moving forward to the main topic, right? So the first example that I would like to begin with is SolarWinds. We all are very much aware of SolarWinds. SolarWinds was one of the Fortune 500 companies which got, you know, attacked by the supply chain breach, and you know what happened thereafter. So before I get into how this SolarWinds company was compromised and what all happened with them, I'd like to just take a step behind and explain to you what a supply chain attack is. So supply chain attack, basically what happens is when an attacker, it tries to, rather than not attacking the end company directly, what it tries to do, it tries to take a step ahead. It tries to attack the second level vector and tries to exploit the vulnerability of the second level vector so that when the end party consumes anything from the second level vector, they get compromised. Now, this is the overall thing that happens in a supply chain attack. Now, if I take an example to explain how that happens is, you can see in this diagram, there are a number of users here. And an attack vector, an attacker wants to attack this, compromise this n number of users. And it is not possible to probably go and target each and every users one by one and compromise them. So what happens here is the attacker is very well aware that all of these users have uses a common site. But the problem is all of these sites are deployed individually. So compromising each of these sites individually will be a task, mammoth task itself. So what the attack vector does is he goes ahead, he knows that all of these sites uses a ad component from a third party ad company. So he goes ahead and compromises this ad company, which basically what he does is he goes ahead and ingests a keylogger or a malicious files in this ad company in one of the files. And when these sites load up these malicious file, it ingested into these sites. And when these users, they use or they approach these sites, that malware or that keylogger gets downloaded into this end user. So you see here, rather than going ahead and targeting, n number of users here, the attacker or the APT can target second degree vendor here and thereafter compromise n number of sites and the end users here. And this is the same strategy that was used by the APTs to target SolarWinds. So what happened in SolarWinds is in 2019, in September 2019, a group of hackers, they infiltrated into SolarWinds infrastructure. And what they did is they infiltrated into the infrastructure, and they did not do anything much there for the next 5 months. They went there stealth. And in that 5 months, what they did is they built a, a malware which is now called as Sandburst, and they embedded that malware into a software known as Orion. And what happened is any customer that is using the software, that was using the Orion software, we see it was around 18,000 plus customers who were using the Orion software, in return got compromised. So you see how the attacker, they took time to craft a malware and ingest into the system. Now, the funny fact here is that neither SolarWinds nor the Orion software developers identified this malware being embedded into the software code. It was actually detected by FireEye. So FireEye, when they saw that there is malicious communications happening from an Orion software, that's when they went ahead and started investigating into what is this, and they identified certain things which helped develop or which helped develop a mitigating solution, that is to build a kill switch which helped control the spread of this malware. Now, you can see in this diagram, I have drawn a timeline here showing that in 2019, the infrastructure was compromised. In February 2020, they embedded the malware. In December 2020 is when the FireEye detected it. And then they implemented the kill switch. I will explain what kill switch is in a bit from now. But this is a high level overview of what SolarWind uh, is. Now, getting into a little more technicalities of this SolarWinds. So we see that how SolarWinds got compromised is, right. The initial exploit that was developed by the attackers was they started, executing. They started execution via SMB probing using Eternal Blue. Now, Eternal Blue, Eternal Blue is a tool that was developed by NSA in US. Okay, so they developed a tool which apparently got leaked by shadow brokers. So shadow brokers, they got hold of Eternal Blue, and then they started using that in the wild, and which got spread in the wild. And now Eternal Blue is a software that is also a tool that is available in the wild. Anyone or most of the APT groups, they use this Eternal Blue. In the later slides, we'll see how this Eternal Blue is used. Now, stepping back to the attack feature, right? What they did is they used this Eternal Blue to enter into the system. Once they entered into the system, what they did is they used a malware which is called as double pulsar. Now, what happens with the double pulsar is, as soon as a double pulsar is downloaded, as soon as this malware is dropped into the system, it registers itself as an authenticate or a legitimate service. What it does is it modifies the registry into auto run, which means whenever a service is started, it gets into an auto run mode. Secondly, what it does is it also registers itself as a Microsoft Security Center service. So what happens is, whenever someone sees this, every time what service is running, it is the Microsoft Security Service Center which is running. So it covers itself with a legitimate code, thereby giving it persistence. Now, the next thing that we see is it uses the SMB message crafting methodology to further, propagate within various, systems. And that's how this technology, or that's how this malware could infect so many systems across the world. I, just briefly went through over the Eternal Blue. Considering we are just beginning our slides, I would not, shout down with a lot of technicalities. But now that we have paced up, I will start getting into the technicalities. If there are questions, feel free to put it in the chat or somewhere. As we get to the tail end of this session, we'll try answering those. Now, the second important example that I like to pick up is Ukraine power grid attack. We all are very much familiar of the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia, right? And in 2015 and 2016, right? Russia has been poking things there, and they have caused a lot of cyber attacks, right? And I would like to take one of the cyber attacks because we are studying or we are going through a workshop which closely links to ICS. I want to pick up an example or a story from an ICS field and probably explain to you in detail of how it got executed, what were the technicalities of it. Now, going to the attack overview, right? There were, as I mentioned, it was a Russia-backed attack on Ukraine. The independent researchers clearly claim it. The APT group, we know where it is based out of, and all those things links to one thing, that it was done by Russia. Not going there. Now, we'll understand what did they do. So there was two major attacks which was carried out by Russia Link Group. One was Sandworm in 2015. The other one was Electrum in 2016. And both of this was targeted towards Ukraine's power grid. Now, what this attack did is not just power grid, but this attack also targeted various critical infrastructures such as healthcare, and then there were various other defense systems which was attacked and targeted. So this was an attack that was targeted towards critical infrastructure in and around the country. Now, the method how the user gained access into the critical infrastructure is none other than by using the what you call it as weakest link in security. And what is the weakest link in security? It is humans. We know humans is the weakest link in the security. No matter how much redundant technologies you bring, no matter how much advanced technologies you bring, if you have your weakest link out over there, not educated, not updated, if he clicks or she clicks on a malicious link, that's there, that's done, right? And that's what we see over and over again, phishing being one of the primary by which the APTs, they deliver, they try to target the systems and they deliver malwares. Now, in the sandworm methodology, what happened is, once the malware was in the system, right, it manipulated various controls of the control systems, and it tried to bring down power grids multiple times. And what happened? What was the objective of it? The objective was to bring control over the critical infrastructure and demonstrate their power over critical infrastructures, and also demonstrate their power of controlling a country's critical infrastructure sitting remotely. Now, what was the impact of it? The impact was, because the power went down, lot of defense systems went down, lot of lot of healthcare systems went down, lot of other technologies were brought down. So there was no power supply at this point in time. And that was one thing. Second thing is, because it was controlled remotely, there was no direct human intervention. So when something went down, when power outages went, it was just like a stack of cards. When one fell, electricity fell down, every other components fell down one by one, bringing a standstill to the entire nation. That's what it happened. A lot of servers went down, a lot of systems went down because there was no power outage. Because there was power outages. Yes, there were backups, but whenever power goes down, there is a fractional gap when a power comes up, right? Even if a backup has to be turned on, there is a fractional gap. So those things were brought in control, and that was demonstrated to the foreign adversaries. So what do we learn from this, right? What do we learn from, sorry, what do we learn from this? That it is very important that we build a strong fort around critical infrastructures, right? And critical infrastructures are not just confined to nowadays electric power grid or healthcare systems or things. India is also a part of space war, right? We are getting into space war. And you might also have heard of instances where, APT groups are, probably trying to attack into various satellites, try to, disorient its overall, trajectory, or try to disable it and, spy on countries, or, there are a couple of Starlinks that was, hacked and then sent down back to the earth. So when you see all those things, which means that the critical infrastructure needs to be fortified, it needs to be protected all the more better and stronger. Give me a minute. Yes. Yes. So moving into a little more technicalities of this, what I call it as, of this slide, right? So how did this overall, sandstorm happen? So what happened is here is the threat actors, right? They sent out a phishing email which was targeted, spear phishing email, which was targeted toward a certain set of employees. What they did is they clicked on a malicious link, they downloaded the attachment. Now here's the thing: the malware that they downloaded was a dual-edged sword. Now, why do I say a dual-edged sword? Is because the malware they downloaded had two functionalities, right? One, it worked as a keylogger. Second, it worked as a reverse proxy. So what happened is, as a keylogger, it used to capture the password for logins. And as a reverse proxy, what it did is, rather than the threat actor connecting to the malware or to the system, what it did is this malware would reverse connect back to the threat actor. In return, what happened is, with the remote access, the threat actor using the password could enter or control the system networks. So if you take a look on this diagram, right, you can see a very beautifully and a very well architected network. The control systems are sitting inside a DMZ. There is an internal firewall, there is an external firewall, there is network segmentation happening. All of that things are there. Yet, you see, with one click on the phishing email, the malware could be beautifully downloaded, and it could establish a keylogger, as well as it could establish a reverse proxy. Now, this was a high level overview of what the Sandstorm does. Now, getting into a little more detail of how this all happened, right? As I mentioned, this happened in 2015, which means Russia demonstrated the sandworm capability in 2015, and they also did something in 2016. I'll go through it. So what happened is, in 2015, as I mentioned earlier, they spear phished and targeted certain employees. Okay, and they sent across a word file, a macro word file. Now, when they clicked on the macro word file, as soon as it get downloaded, right, the macro word file deployed a malware called as Black Energy. And what Black Energy did is, as I mentioned earlier, what Black Energy did is it deployed a keylogger using Mimikatz credential dumps functionality, and it also used a DSC fix for bypassing kernel security. Once it did that, what it did, it also went ahead and took over remote admin access of SCADA systems. Once it got the remote admin control of the SCADA systems, right, it also did two things. One, it tried to target various systems within the ICS. That is, it tried to it tried to fiddle with the breakers of the ICS. Second, it also went ahead and started to disrupt the communication lines. What it did is, it went ahead and threw upon a DDoS attack on the telecom DDoS attack on the SIB server, so the communications channel could not be leveraged. And we see that, and further, what happened is, this exploit was not patched properly. In 2015, when this was identified, they took some mitigative actions, but the systems were not patched. And what happened is, because the systems were not patched properly, the APTs could use the main backdoor again. And what they did is they went ahead and leveraged the OPC protocol vulnerabilities. And what they did is they established they established a dropper file which went ahead and periodically erased the file from the systems irreversibly. So now the user could never get the files again. This is a brief overview of the framework of how crash override framework works. As I mentioned previously, the uh, sandworm, it created a main backdoor, right? And using this, what happened is the attackers, they created additional backdoors and they've built up additional tools. And using the main backdoor, they installed a launcher back into the systems. So the launcher did two things. One, it dropped a data wiper. Two, it dropped various payloads. Now, these payloads were used by the data wiper to periodically execute data wiping or erasing the data. And that happened randomly, and due to which, again, it was not detected by the systems for a while. So this was a high level understanding or a detailed understanding of how Sandworm and crash override framework worked, right? And how the APT is leveraged in attacking the systems across the globe. Now, what does it mean to us? How does this concern us? That is something that I would like to bring, right? One thing that we see a lot of times is that systems are not patched regularly, right? There are systems that are there since ages or since the time it was deployed, right? And few learnings from this is from the Ukraine grid attack. What we saw is the SCADA system vulnerabilities are not periodically patched, right? That is one thing. It also means that if the ICS are not properly patched and governed, it leads to a larger disruption, right? And it also means that if your critical systems are fully automated and does not have a maker checker methodology in place, which means you have automation running everything, and you as a human or we as a human do not have direct control over the automation, it causes a havoc. As I mentioned in the beginning, I am a very hardcore evangelist of security automations. That's my bread and butter. But I always advise even my customers and my end users that even though we are automating a lot of things, right? We always mention that you need to have a control over automation. You always need to ensure that automation is not running autonomously, but rather being controlled by humans at time as well. So that if there come a time that you want to hold an automation, you be able to do that. Because if you give complete automation and that falls into hands of the APTs, right, or threat actors, they may use it to the potential, like we saw in Ukraine power grid, to bring a nationwide disruption. So what is the alternate or what is the mitigating solution for these things? As I mentioned previously, one of the primary things that we need to do is we need to have a regular patching methodology. Whenever I talk to, my friends and colleagues who are in the security field, and and when we talk about, they are like, yeah, Jomon, it's like hazaro system hai. It's like there are hundreds of servers. इन सारे को पैच करते करते that takes too much time. नहीं होता. But what happens is, ye same open patches, this same vulnerabilities are later used by the attackers. So it's better to have a proper process which will regularly patch the systems rather than going in a firefighting mode when there's fire at home. That's one thing that we need to do. Second is Intel driven operations. What does Intel driven operations mean by the eternal glue, which was leveraged? It was not the first time that was there seen, being leveraged. If the operations were governed by intelligence, if there was operations which was linked to intelligence, the methodology used by the eternal blue could have been identified, they could have planned better for it, and things could not have been compromised. Third thing is human in the loop. As I mentioned, not giving complete control to the automations end to end, but rather having a human control over critical systems, over critical processes, so that when you want to bring a shutdown, when you want to bring a, when you want to just stop certain things, you do that, right? One example that I like to bring forth is if there's a wildfire going on, right? What a farmer does is they try to bring in a controlled fire. Why do they bring in controlled fire? Is because a big fire is coming through. And if a space is already burned down, then the fire cannot cross the burnt down place, right? That is exactly what we need to do. If there's already a disruption happening, and if as a human can bring a halt to this disruption at any point, that is exactly what we are trying to do by bringing human inside and completely automated process. Moving forward, I would like to just bring a mind map of this, power grid attack that we just talked about, right? Initial access, just reiterating the same thing. What they did is they spear fished the campaign, right? They infiltrated into a corporate network and they dropped a malware which was known as Black Energy. And using Mimikat's credential harvesting, they got the credentials and then they took access to the SCADA system. When they had a control to the SCADA system, they took access to the RAdmin software exploit, and they built they use the software to exploit multiple things. If you see here, they use the software to manipulate power grid. They use the software to build a backdoor. They also use the software to destruct the kill desk software as well. Now, using the RAdmin, they could probably go ahead and control several other things, right? They could bring breakers, they could open the breakers for the grid to overload. They could also go ahead and do a telecom DDoS so that the communication lines were, it went haywire. They could also bring down the UPS backup power. So what all of this resulted into, there was power outage in the entire country or a specific region for say 1 to 6 hours, with the authorities not having a clue of why this is happening, because all the systems, all the power grids, everything is functional, everything is working, just that it is not coming up. All right. As I mentioned in the beginning of the session, I have few video recordings. Considering we are already 30 minutes into it, I would not go ahead and pull up live. I'll go ahead and run this video and probably explain you through the video. So what we see here is, what should I hope you guys are able to see the screen. Just a minute. Yes. Yes. All right. So you can see a screen grab where I'm showing, demonstrating a video of Shodan. So, Shodan is a specialized search engine which is used to discover and analyze internet connected devices. So unlike traditional search engines like Google, which indexes, website, Shodan focuses on, indexing devices and services that are, exposed to the internet. So you see here in the table of content, you can see, industrial systems. So let's go ahead and look forward to certain, keywords that can help us to, probably go ahead and search certain things that is open out in the wild. Let's copy this and let's go ahead and search in the Shodan. Now we see here in tank inventory, when we search it there, this query gives out around 5,298 results. And then we one bit further look into it, it tells us what is the capacity. We can see that there are approximately 89 unlead, 91 unlead, and diesel capacities. And that's cool. right? You get to know about the details of, systems or petrol pumps out over there. Let's go down and see certain things. We see that that's Microtech street light. Let's go ahead and search about it. What does street light show? We're going and searching it. Oh, it reverted 14 more, results. Let's probably click on one. Oh, see, it gives us much more details, right? It tells us what are the algorithms, what are the encryption methods. Oh, if you take a look to the left, you can see what are the vulnerabilities, right? And one of the vulnerability that we look at is 9.8, that is CV45315, which is router OS vulnerability, and we see it's remote code execution. And imagine, if you search this, and if there are payloads out there where you can just search for this vulnerability, there are payloads, and if this system is not patched yet, using those payloads, you can go back and exploit those things, those streetlights and things there. Let's go back and try and see if we can fetch something related to SMB that we have been talking for a while now. Now for something, it should be under networks here. So you see, all of these are like the queries that you can use, so that if you want to find something for Skype or things, you can do that. Now we see here something related to Samba, right? Let's copy this query and try searching back in Shodan. We see we have got 160 results. Let's scroll down. What do we see here? We see that the authentication is disabled. And let's scroll down. Are we able to find something? Oh, again, a remote code vulnerability that we see here. And using the CV and the payload, and probably get a control of the system again. So this has been there for a while, right? It's been there since September 15th. Now, how do I, as a threat intel guy, use these capabilities to mitigate my systems, right? So this is Grey Noise, which is a threat intelligence platform. And you see there are a lot of IPs known here. What I can do is I can copy that IP, come here and probably search and see, right? What are the regions? What are the classifications? All those things within the platform to understand or gain more context around the IPs to understand how things are being done in the wild. We see one here that is SMB crawler. Let's click on it. It states the tip platform states that it's an unknown intent, right? And when we look further into it, it says that fingerprinting of SSH and TLS negotiation has been done in this IP, and they have flagged this. They also tell what are the ports that has been seen there. Let's take a look here. Now we see one more thing, that is a WannaCry variant of SMB connection, right? Which means this particular IP was used for WannaCry activity. So what does this mean by? Which means that if you see this IP inside your network, which means you could be a potential target of an attack vector within your organization. So that is how, using Shodan and this threat intelligence platform, you can say. Now this also, the threat intelligence platform also help you understand the rising trends within the within various regions, within various within various sector of organizations. Now you can see that there has been 20 unique connections being tried to execute there. Going further down, let me see if I can. Okay, Zycel C. So again, remote code execution, we see that there has been a constant increase in the number of unique IPs that we are observing. We see that there were 18 unique IPs and there were 110 overall IPs that we have observed so far in the platform, right? And out of which we see a lot of malicious IPs have come forward and tried to, scan us through. And all of those are trying to use Zycel RC. So this is how, probably using threat intelligence platform, you can understand how an IP is maliciously linked to various other APTs or threat actors. And you can see that this particular IP was used by an attack vector to use so many malicious activities. All of these are basically tags. What is a tag? Tags are basically the syntax, or tags are basically the identifiers that can help you understand what are the methodologies, or what are the executions, or what are the activities that has been performed by the attacker using the particular IP. Now that is how you help, or that is how I showed you. I did not get into execution of stuff, but I showed you how using uh, a Shodan command, right? A ready-made available free Shodan command. You can search a query on Shodan itself. It will give you a list of systems. It will give you a list of things, devices that are connected over the internet unauthenticated, or over the internet authenticated. It also tell you what are the IPs. It will also tell you what are the open ports. It will also tell you what are the vulnerabilities it is vulnerable to. So using that, so imagine if then ICS is not protected, right? And it is kept open to the internet. Not necessarily a power grid or something, anything across the world, or any SCADA system across a manufacturing unit or something is exposed over the internet, and it is not patched properly, or it is not guarded properly. Imagine the amount of havoc existing, an APT can do by controlling over these systems. Moving forward to the next minute. Moving forward to the next example that I would like to pick is about WannaCry, right? It is one of the biggest attacks that we have seen out over there. It has impacted a lot of systems out over there. We know it targeted more than 3 lakh systems, and this was something that created a lot of disruption in not just BFSI sector, not just in manufacturing sectors, but across a lot of industries span the world. And if you look at how this was done, it was simply the same thing that I've been saying from the beginning. Is again, it used an unpatched Microsoft vulnerability. And the APTs again used same software. That is, they used Eternal Blue, which was developed by NSA, and they used a combination of double pulsar to stay stealth and undetected. And what happened is the greatest impact of this system was primarily because of it was primarily because of the worm capabilities of the WannaCry. Minute. Yes. Worm capabilities of WannaCry. So what it did is it went ahead and exploited the 2017 0144 vulnerability, which allowed remote code execution via Samba and on port 445. Now, if we get a little bit into the what this vulnerability all about was, right? So as I mentioned, the CVE was 2017 0144. And if you look at the details of this vulnerability, you'll see one major thing is that every single version other than Windows 11 is vulnerable. You see Windows 10 Gold, you see Windows Server 2016, Windows Server 2012, Windows 7, you see Windows Vista. All of this are vulnerable to SMB remote code execution. Now, why was Windows 11 not vulnerable and all of this vulnerable? Because before the release of Windows 11, Microsoft went ahead and patched the Samba vulnerability. But if you see still, the NVD National Database still scores this as 8.8. In the latest version of 3.x of CVSS scoring, they still have it marked as 8.8, which means why have they marked it 8.8 is because of the least amount of human intervention that is required while going ahead and executing this what you call it as this operations or this activity. Now moving further, shout out to Europol. They have invested a heavy amount of effort to identify how a WannaCry works in. So this is a screen grab from Europol. Europol, there was Interpol, and all of those who work together. And this is an outline of how the WannaCry worked. So we are not sure of how what are the various methods in which a WannaCry gets into the system. But one of the very frequent and one of the very common method is again through unsolicited email, which means one of the users would click on an email, and what happens is that email would go ahead and have a dropper, and that dropper would be a malicious file. It would go ahead and further check for a couple of things, and what it does is it goes ahead and performs a lateral movement. One of the reasons why WannaCry was such a big problem or such a big issue, or it impacted such a large number of systems, is because of its worm capability. What does a worm capability mean by? Meaning it did not require an additional host file to duplicate itself or replicate itself. Rather, it could just replicate itself or move laterally within the systems. Meaning, if I have been infected by ransomware or by WannaCry, my colleague would also be easily be infected because of a lateral movement by the worm without having a need of my colleague clicking on anything or my colleague doing anything. That was one of the reason why this was so widely impacted. And not just that, what it also did is it went ahead and logged out the user from the system so badly that until and unless you do not pay ransom, you could not get back to your system or you could not control your system. So this was a high level overview of how a WannaCry ransomware works. Let's get into the nitty gritties of it. Now this is a little technical into it. What the APT used to do, it used to craft a macro file. Okay, and it used to send it across via phishing mail. If he gets a targeted user, the user clicks on the file. What it does, it goes ahead and drops eternal blue. Now we know eternal blue. What it does, it as soon as it gets dropped, the first thing eternal blue does, it registers itself as MSS ECVC. What is Microsoft's Security Control Center, right? And it enables itself into auto run mode. Now, not just that, what further did is, as soon as this malware is dropped, what the malware used to do is, it used to try and hit a domain, right? It used to try and hit a domain. Why does it used to do so is because generally what happens is, as a malware, as a threat hunter or a malware analyst, what we do is we generally download a file in a sandbox environment. And in an ideal sandbox environment, everyone is 200. Okay, we give its most best environment that it can work in. So APT is being smart enough. What it did is, if it tries to hit a domain, right, a hard-coded domain, if it tries to hit it, and if it used to get a 200 okay, which means the malware would not laterally move. It would understand that it's in a sandbox environment. But if it gets a 404, which means it is not able to get a response from a domain, what it does is this malware goes ahead and starts moving laterally, right? It moves from one system to the other system. And while it moves from one system to the other system, right, it goes back to this point. So you have your dropper here. Dropper is coming down. It is, covering itself as a legitimate. It's counting itself as a legitimate software. It's also going ahead and hitting a domain to find a response. If it finds a 404, it goes ahead to the next system and it initiates here. While in the system it is currently in, what it does is it goes ahead and downloads another file, which is basically the encryptor. And what does the encryptor do? The encryptor goes ahead and encrypts all the files within your system, right? And what it does is it renames the file as well. Meaning, if there was a file named abc.txt, right? WannaCry, what it does, it goes ahead and encrypts that file and also renames that file which was named abc.txt to xyz.pdf. It had 107 extension that it used to use. So what happens is you would not be able to identify the file that we're in. And not just that, it would also go ahead and encrypt all the files with .wncry extension. That was one other thing that it used to do. So this was a little bit a little bit uh, uh, detailed walkthrough on technicality. This is something that I just went through over, couple of minutes back. I would go ahead and explain you the exact encryption methodology, right? So what happens is WannaCry, as soon as it is in the system, right, it used to generate an AES key decryptor per file. What does that mean by? Meaning, if you have 100 files in your system, right? So the WannaCry would go ahead and encrypt all of those 100 plus files with individual decryptor keys. And not just that, the second step here, you see, all of these individual keys, that is 100 plus keys, will be then double encrypted using RSA encryption. Meaning, even if you try to break the RSA encryption, you will be not able to break the AES encryption. So this is two layers of encryption. First of all, you have a decryptor key. First, it is encrypted by a key, and that key is then further encrypted by RSA. That was its encryption method. Now, how did it ensure that the recovery was not done of the file, right? What did WannaCry do so that people could not recover the file? One of the thing is, as I mentioned earlier, it went ahead and renamed the file. That is, from ABC, it would rename to XYZ. From TXT file, it would rename it to a PDF or probably a Word or probably an Excel or whatever it is. It would rename that. That was one thing. Second thing what it did also is it would go ahead and delete the shadow volume copies. Now, what is a shadow volume copies? You might be aware that Windows generally take a backup of the files. So what this worm would also do is and it would go ahead and probably delete the shadow volume files as well. Then what it used to do further, it would also go ahead and would delete or disable the Windows recovery feature so that even at a Windows level, you would not be able to recover it. So the files is renamed, right? The auto backup is deleted. Then the Windows is also disabled. The Windows recovery is also disabled. And what it also used to do is just in case if, you know, some person is able to go ahead and understand the files and things and probably try something to get into the Windows recovery, yet the next step is that it went ahead and removed the backup catalog, which means even if you know where the backup is kept, even if you know there is a backup, you would not be able to understand where a particular backup is kept, which means it removed the backup catalog from the system. And that was one of the way it prevented recovery. And why was WannaCry not detected for a while is because it primarily used the Tor network. It established a CNC server on a Tor network, and all the communication channel used to happen through a Tor network, and all the domains was registered in .onion. So people like you guys are very much aware that if you are in a Tor network, it would be really difficult to go ahead and identify where this communication is heading to because of the constant hop that happens within the network. So this was one of the key feature, or this was one of the primary core things that was leveraged by the APTs that went ahead and encrypted the files and targeted 3 lakh plus systems across the globe. Now, Going ahead, I would like to show you a demo of WannaCry sandbox execution. What I'll do is I'll just click it. Okay. So this is an sandbox environment where I've already run the WannaCry exe. So as you see here, right? Okay, you see this Windows pop-up. Let me do one thing. Let me see if I can go ahead and show you a video grab of how actually a WannaCry gets executed. Give me a minute. Yeah, let me go ahead and play this. This is a video of how a WannaCry gets executed. So this is a Windows system. You can see that automatically child system or a child process is getting executed, and suddenly you can see a WannaCry decryptor coming up on your desktop, and you can see a lot of random files being generated as a temp file. There you see the screens, home screen getting changed to you're getting compromised. That is one of the things that you see. So WannaCry just runs instantly. It just runs so fast that as soon as it checks and identifies that this is not, this domain is not registered, right? It goes ahead and starts executing. And what it does is as soon as it hardly takes minutes for a virus to, encrypt everything. And as soon as that's done, you can see you will find a pop-up coming, and it will give you an option for one or two sample decryption. That is, it will give you where you can start decryption. It will show you how the files can be decrypted. And when you try to do it the second time, it will not give you to do that, which means it will give you a touch and taste of how they can decrypt certain files. But if you have to further go ahead and decrypt any more files, what you will have to do is you will have to pay money. And the pop-up generally gives you a bank wallet where you will have to transfer the money, or where you'll have to throw across, dollars. And it is time based. What happens is if they say that you have 2 hours or something, you're not paying in next 1 hour, the price goes high. And then there would be a point where it says that the permanently the files will be deleted if you're not paying humongous amount of money that is required. So this was one of the screen grab that was already there in the in the WannaCry's script. Going back to our uh, malware that we tried and tested in our sandbox environment. This is a screen grab. You can see the Bitcoin wallet here, and where you have to send the money. If I go into the nitty-gritties of it, let me look at attack methodology. This might take a few seconds here to the load. Yeah. So you can see the attack methodologies here. And one of the attack technique it used was persistence. What it does is the registry key, where the advisory would go ahead and automatically execute a program during the system reboot, so that whenever a system is auto rebooted, right, the system would the process would start running. So this is something that we could figure out from the sandbox environment. Let me go ahead and take a look on the text report. Yeah, yeah, this is the text report. So you can get a lot of general information about the systems here. You can understand when this analysis has been done, what are the OS that has been used. You can also get a lot of other IOC details here. You can see what are the malicious ones, what are the suspicious ones, what are the infos. You can also understand various statistics and sessions. You can also go ahead and understand various headers in the system. Uh, If I look, yeah, you can also understand the processes, right? You can see the process tree here. You can see what WannaCry is, where it did, what it started, and how it executed, what all commands it did, what are the processes it went ahead. You can see WannaCry here and here. So you can probably go ahead and have a detailed understanding of report. And using these IOCs, right, that you have here, you can ingest it in your threat intelligence platform, and from there you can furthermore ingest the threat contextualized threat intel into your SIM, and probably be aware of, be alerted about any malicious activity that is done, so that your SOC operations teams are already aware of any probable attack that comes in, because you already have an intel about it around. Now, moving further, yes, as I've been telling, right, I wanted to give you guys a key takeaway. Not just listening to, I know you guys have been listening to me for an hour, and not just hearing various examples that you could probably get from the internet or read through the various blogs and all. I wanted to ensure that you guys, when you go back, right, you guys are taking techniques and tactics that we as a defenders use in our day-to-day operations. Allow me 1 minute. 1 minute. Okay. What we could use in our day-to-day, what we generally use in our day-to-day operations, right? Uh, from defending attacks, we need to head into defending attack patterns. Now, what does it mean by John? What do you mean by defending attacks to defending attack patterns? Right? Uh, what is an attack? Now, attack is a MITRE framework. So MITRE is an open source, security community driven. They were established in 2013. It's an, open source knowledge base of advisories. So what is the full form of an attack? Attack means adversarial tactic, techniques, and common knowledge. So this is designed and used by the cybersecurity professionals to understand an attacker's behavior, right? We know that we I'm based out of Mumbai, and there are advisories rolled out by, the Mumbai police about, you know, attackers and attack patterns and all those things. We know about a thief, for example, right? If we know that there's a particular guy, probably 6 feet tall, wearing a red hoodie, taking a spanner in his hand, probably moving around, after 2 a.m., having, something applied on his body and all those things, which is identifiers, right? Which is identifiers about a thief. Imagine this thief leaves from Mumbai and he heads into Jaipur, or he heads into Indore, right? And if, the Jaipur police or the Indore police is able to correlate the pattern used or the dress up used by this thief in Mumbai and correlate them into a similar pattern in Jaipur or Indore, that is what we also want to try and do. This is something that is used in a real world, and we are trying to replicate that into our cyber world as well. That is by using an attack methodology. Now, as I mentioned, it is tactic, techniques, and common knowledge, right? And this is the screen grab from MITRE's attack framework. If you see to the left, you can see various options here, right? These are basically categories. And so there are categories, there are, attack methods and tactics and techniques that an APT uses, right? For an enterprise is different than what it uses for a Windows. The methodology is different for what it uses for a Mac OS. The methodology is different for what it uses for an ICS as well, right? And if you see on the top, these are tactics. And if you see below, these are techniques. So if I simply put what a technique and a tactic is, technique are the steps used by an attacker to achieve a tactic, meaning an attacker would use, you know, exploiting public facing application so that it could establish an initial access to the system, right? Further explaining, an attacker could probably use a bootkit to establish persistence within a system. So the attack framework lets you know the tactics and the techniques used by an attacker so that you be aware of the pattern in which the attacker attacks. Now, why do we need to know about tactics and techniques, right? You would say, Jomon, we already get flooded in by a lot of technical IOCs, right? We get IPs, we get domains, we get URLs, we get hashes. Why not we go ahead and block it in firewall? Why not we go ahead and simply block it in proxy and all those things? We'll ingest it into SIEM and we are well safe. We are quite good because we are going ahead and proactively blocking and putting it in SIEM for monitoring as well. But one major problem that we have seen towards IOCs is that the IOCs are now getting short-lived, right? Hashes are short-lived, IPs are short-lived. With increasing cloud computing solutions, what happens is the shelf life of an IOC is not 6 months now. It has come down significantly. It has come down to 48 hours to 15 days. That is one. But the pro factor of using an IOC is that it is very easy to be implemented. It is very easy to act upon. But this is a short-term defense. This is not a permanent defense, because imagine you going ahead and blocking a set of IPs or things on firewall. You keep on adding it, but there will come a time when your firewall's list is full, right? You will need a time when you have to take that export out. You need to cleanse all those IPs and things that you have put in the firewall. You need to get those things corrected and re-add things. So that's the reason I mentioned that IOCs are short-lived, or IOCs are a short-term defense. But when it comes to tactics, right? When it comes to tactics, they are, once you patch a methodology, once you patch a remote code execution, once you patch, those SMB vulnerability, once you patch those, that tactic for once, then you don't have to keep patching that tactics over and over again. But I do acknowledge the fact that patching a tactic is difficult, right? But if you are able to achieve how you can patch a tactic or a technique used by a attack vector, or generally used by an attack vector, which means you are creating a long-term defense in your organizations against a particular methodology. Now, moving forward, right? Understanding it further, right? I spoke about attack and I spoke about TTP. Attack, where it gives you a framework and a knowledge about how, uh, you know, how attacker works, what are the technique it's used, what are the TTP it tries to, what are the tactic it tries to achieve by a technique. But coming to TTP intelligence, right? What is TTP intelligence? Knowing that a hash is linked to credential dumping via mimikatz, right, is TTP intelligence. Meaning, if you know a particular IOC is linked to a particular tactic or a technique, right, it lets you know what is the potential strategy used by an adversary to get into your system, right? So blocking a strategy, blocking, not allowing key logging, you know, constrains Mimikatz from performing key logging methodology. Not just Mimikatz, be it any other keylogger. If you are bringing a barrier for key logging, which means it will cut through all the credential harvesting by keylogging methodology. And that is what I intend to say, that using TTP intelligence, that is linking an IOC to a tactic and understanding the tactic used by the adversary is important. Moving further, right? You asked me, Joman, ठीक है यार, तू बता दिया कि टैक्टिक होता है, टेक्निक होता है, इसका एक डेटाबेस है. We know, we have to go ahead and search and understand कि APT कैसा काम करता है, right? How do I defend against it? That is one primary question that everyone generally asks. How do I defend against it? So attack also has a sister framework that is called as defense, right? Yes, just I mentioned earlier, right? WannaCry, it uses eternal blue, then it goes ahead and checks the domain, then it performs a lateral movement, then it goes ahead and encrypts a file, right? Then it goes ahead and deletes all the shadow files and things, right? It establishes a backdoor. All of this are tactics and techniques for initial access, for execution, for persistence, and all those things. But if you see, attack methodologies are finite, right? APTs are not gonna find a new method to attack me and a new method to attack you, because there are billions of people out on the earth. There are 100,000 companies out on the earth. They are not gonna go ahead and build 100,000 different attack methodologies. No, there are set of methods that they are standardly gonna go use. So if we correlate the attack pattern that you use and using my trace defend, what we can do is we can find a correlating point, which is known as digital artifact. Meaning, if you know a set of process that a WannaCry uses, right, or a set of process that an APT uses to compromise a organization or compromise any particular system, you can also understand what are the common factors or what are the defense methodology that you need to use, so that these things, so that your organization can be prevented from these attacks. I don't say that once implemented solution is a lifetime solution. No, but I do certainly state that once you implement a solution, it's like basing a foundation. And then what you need to do is you need to iterate upon it. Meaning, if you are building, if you are implementing a defense technology for key logging, there will be advancement of key logging. But once you have a defense technology there, what you need to do is you need to iterate and get things developed. Simply put, in real life example is like virus, right? Corona. We all know, we all were infected by corona. We had antidote of it, but we also had booster shots. Why did we have booster shots? Because of the change of variant. But people who had first, covaxing or those things injected, they had an initial shield. The booster was primarily just to add on. The booster was primarily just to go ahead and bring forth more protection against it. That is exactly what I'm trying to say. If you understand the attacker's methodology, and if you implement a solution that defends against attackers methodology, which means going forward you just have to iterate on that builded function. I know this was a lot of technicalities. How do you operationalize it, right? How do you operation, considering I just got 18 minutes with me, I like to quickly move forward and demonstrate two use cases, and probably give you a little time for questions. So these things are complex, right? These things are heavy and these things are complex. How do we go ahead and leverage this? And this is where, right, we can start using AI. So you get unstructured intel and from various writing blogs, from reports, from advisory letters and all those things. You get all of this unstructured content. Imagine you ingesting this unstructured content into an AI, and AI helping you identify TTPs, right? And from TTP, you leverage a tip platform to validate the intel that you get. You bundle this up, you add a relation, and then you send forward. So what happens is this becomes your contextualized intel from an unstructured source, which means you can probably gather intel from Twitter, you can gather intel from from text messages, you can gather intel from any social media, write up blogs and all. Take that, use an LLM, convert the unstructured into technical TTPs, and from that you validate the things, you bundle it up, you add relations, you correlate it, and you put it into your tip. Now let me do one thing. Rather than just going ahead and telling you this thing, let me try and go ahead and demonstrate a video that will show you how we can probably do this. And this, I've taken the liberty of taking a real life example from my organization. How do we do this? How do we extract TTP from unstructured intel and make it into a structured intel? I'll go ahead and play this video.
While working with structured intelligence, may it be in the sticks format or just a regular old API response, is ideal for a threat intel program. Unfortunately, a lot of the security knowledge around attacks or the new threat actors or the more recent trends happening in the security industry are often expressed in more unstructured formats, such as blogs, advisories, alerts, so on and so forth. It becomes of critical importance that any threat intel function have a capacity to automatically parse through these unstructured bits of intel and derive structured information to process and automate security tasks. Because just throwing people at the security problem isn't really going to solve it unless and until we can automate key aspects to ensure humans spend their time where it is most required. It is at this junction we can leverage LLMs in threat intelligence, where one of the most, actually arguably the most best application of an LLM in threat intel, apart from forming relations and making connections, is extraction, where we give an LLM a large blob of unstructured intelligence and have it converted into a structured form for us. To kind of go over that in a more practical manner than just theory, let us experiment with an advisory from CISA and let us see if we're able to derive structured TTPs from this unstructured blob of text. And by TTPs, not just, what are the TTP IDs like a regex match. Let's see if we're able to make an LLM infer TTPs like what a human analyst would normally do. So this is one of the CISA advisories with a bunch of CVEs, a lot of TTPs, and just talks about how the threat actor is performing or conducting attacks. So let's go all the way down. So we see it's quite big as well. And let's copy the entire article. And once we have this article on hand, let's head over to our OpenAI Playground console, where we are going to be attempting to have an LLM model, that is GPT-o1 Mini, convert this CISA advisory into a structured DTP form. So we do have a prompt already pre-filled as a preset template for us, where we ask the LLM to extract all the TTPs from the threat report, where not only do we ask it to identify the explicit TTPs, we also ask it to infer implicit TTPs and describe everything in a very structured JSON format so we can plug this into further automations. So without further ado, let's paste our article and let's attempt to parse it. Let's go through all the content to make sure we got everything once. And we see there's an image over there. We know O1 Mini doesn't support those formats. Perfect. And now we can run them. Given that we're using the newer O1 family of reasoning powered LLMs, it's going to take a minute, so let's give it a minute for it to complete running. GPT-o1 mini model that the GPT-o1 mini model has given us a response where in a very neat structured JSON format under the TTP's key, we see all the techniques it has both extracted and inferred, where we get the technique ID, the name, the tactic, whether it is explicit or implicitly inferred, and the justification saying why this has been mentioned. Let us try to go to one of the implicit inferences to see how good an LLM is able to understand cybersecurity and the TTPs. Perfect. So we see one particular TTP over here, where that is T1027, and we see the justification saying the use of the obfuscator and the other obfuscation technique in malware indicates an attempt to evade detection and analysis. So given this report does indeed talk about how the threat actors obfuscate the malwares, we can indeed come to the conclusion that this is a valid inferred technique. And something really interesting is this is not even the O1 model, but the O1 mini. So, LLMs are pretty much out there. Now, you can ask me, Ashik, is this really the most an LLM can do? Do I have to copy paste an advisory or an article every single time I want to analyze it? No. So, this exercise is meant for more as an introduction on one of the many use cases that are done or could be done using LLMs. Later in the workshop, towards the end, we have a more advanced version of the same exercise where we plug this in a more automated manner, where we not only have it kind of extract the TTPs for us, but also summarize and visualize the entire report slash alert slash advisory for us.
So that was a quick video recording that we performed to explain how we can extract TTPs using LLMs. I got a couple more slides to move forward before I conclude.
While
Right. Uh, so moving forward, right, I initially talked about using IOCs. Then I talked about using TTPs, that is threat intelligence. But now there is a grade 3 that we are heading into. That is called as defense intelligence. So what is a defense intelligence, right? We know that we already have indicators, we have vulnerabilities, we have threat actors, we have malwares. It is very important that we share these indicators, we share these vulnerabilities, threat actors, and malwares, to our fellow organizations or organizations out there. And now there are various services out there, right? Threat intelligence is a service, threat intelligence feed is a service, and all those things. Now that you have so many intelligence feeds coming in, right, there's a large volume of intelligence that is you're receiving. But what we as industry veterans are understanding is, because you have a large volume or large chunk of intel coming in, it creates a lot of data junk. Which means if you don't have certain contextualized or rightly executable intel with you, it does not add any value. It is just one other data that you're getting, right? And that is where we are moving ahead from threat intelligence to defense intelligence. Now, what is defense intelligence? It's just a step forward or just a step ahead. If there is an indicator, right, and if there's an indicator, why don't you go ahead and create or share an SIM hunt rules for it? So what happens is not just going ahead and consuming the indicators, rather having a SIM rule already written, which means that these indicators and everything are pre-embedded and can be just, imported into the system. Similarly, if there are EDR rules for a vulnerability, signature patterns that can be understood, or if there are YARA rules. So all of this helps you in an ACD, or this helps you in a threat data lake. So what happens is you are aware of how what indicators are, you are aware of what vulnerabilities are, you are aware of what threat actors are, and not just that, you're moving a step ahead. You also get SIM hunt rules to protect from a set of indicators, IICs. You also get EDR rules to protect from a set of vulnerabilities. You also have signature patterns to identify a threat actor. You have a YARA rule going ahead and protecting from a set of malwares. That is where we are heading into, so that you have detection alongside indicators so that it becomes easily implementable. All right. We also have one more video recording that we did. Uh, we used our tip platform, we used AI, and we used SOAR technology combined together to bring defense engineering. This is called as defense engineering that we are trying to do. And I have, I've used our native products to demonstrate how we are now going ahead as a defense personnel, as a person working in cybersecurity defense field, how we are using AI, how we are using security automation, and how we are using defense intelligence combined together to stitch and build a beautiful framework or build a beautiful storyline that goes ahead and helps us to prevent these attack methodologies that happens. I'll go ahead and play this video, and probably that should uh, take me to the last slide. That would be the key takeaways. Playing the video right now.
From running the previous exercise, a question we face more often than not is, okay, Ashik, we have a lot of detection engineering content right now, which has been converted from the various indicators and TTPs we have processed, but how do we streamline the process of understanding this content and implementing them? Because at the rate the community shares intel, which is relevant to us, it is still quite the number of detections to implement. Enter the combination of collaboration tools, SOAR platforms, and defense intelligence, where we are able to use the power of defense intelligence and SOAR platforms to automatically receive said defense intelligence, convert them to your target specified technology, and not only apply them, but also perform some level of proactive threat hunting and prepare for incident onboarding. Without any further ado, let's check out the SOAR workflow that helps us achieve this. So let's head over to the playbook section. And let's head over to the detection content powered threat hunting playbook. So this is effectively the playbook or workflow which understands the detection engineering content that has been shared with you, converts it to the appropriate target technology format, and does some level of basic threat hunting, and also creates a durable search for future alerts. So let's really quickly take a look at the workflow before we get into running it. So we effectively receive detection engineering content, and we see what type of content this is. And for the purpose of this exercise, let's say we're receiving a Sigma role. And while a lot of platforms support Sigma rules to be directly ingested, it's more often than not recommended that we have these converted to the target rule type. But given that unparsing and repacking Sigma rules into target technologies more often than not is extremely taxing, we're going to be using the power of LLMs and few shot learning to convert a Sigma rule into the target technology, which in our particular scenario is a Splunk rule, after the conversion of which we add it as a durable saved search for the future. We publish an alert on collaboration platforms in case we want to share this intel again back to the community, and we also start retrospectively searching on our SIM platforms to understand if we've been impacted by this. If we have, we extract the indicators immediately, contextualize them via our tip platforms, and prepare incident information so that we can onboard it to our target incident management platform at our preference. Now that we understand the workflow, without any further ado, let's try running the playbook. So for the purpose of the demo, we're going to be running this playbook off of a previous run log. But in a production style scenario where we actually implement this in a very streamlined and automated manner, this would ideally be achieved by means of a webhook, just the same way how we triggered an Intel-driven threat hunt from our tip platform, we will be able to trigger a detection engineering-powered threat hunt from our collaboration platforms. So we see that we have received a Sigma rule, and let's try running the playbook to see how this is onboarded and actioned on using our SOAR platform. So we see our SOAR workflow has successfully kicked off. Oh, it's already finished. That was quick, right? Um, we see that we've received our Sigma rule. We have effectively understood that this rule belongs to Sigma. We have generated the respective prompts for the LLM. And not only have we done that, we've also successfully converted this Sigma rule into this really, really nice Splunk rule, which is directly implementable. From doing the conversion, we proceed to create this as a durable saved search for the future. And we also proceed to do a retrospective hunt on Splunk. And from running it, we see that there are actually some results for the query which we ran, upon which we publish an alert saying we have been impacted with a trusted group, and we also share the required information to the community to enable them to detect this faster. And we extract all the indicators of compromise, look them up on our threat intel platform, and build this really amazing payload which can be onboarded onto our incident management or ticketing platforms of choice. And this is one of the methods where we can implement a collaboration between defense intelligence, collaboration platforms, and SOAR platforms to automatically onboard detections and implement them at record time.
Right. Uh,
From running the previous exercise,
Sorry. Now, now I would like to call out the key takeaways, right? I'm tailing to the end of this session, and I would like to just take 2 more minutes. Just want to highlight about the key takeaways or the major takeaways that we have from this session, right? Uh, One thing that I mentioned in the beginning, or I've been a storyline that has been going throughout is sometimes it is all about the basics, right? It's not about getting into sophisticated corporate or enterprise level defense technologies or methods. No, it's just basics. What is the basics? Just go ahead and patch your systems, right? It would be the basics. For the further stepping down into much more basics is do not click on phishing emails. Do not click on unsolicited emails that comes across your way. Because when you do that, it's not just you compromise yourself, you at times would go ahead and compromise your whole organization, right? The second important thing that I wanted you to go as a takeaway is the fact it is important that you start defending the attack patterns than the attacks, right? Defending attack patterns will be long term as compared to defending attacks and IOCs that you get from your sources. Third thing that I want you to go ahead as a takeaway is start leveraging AI as your assistants in security, right? Try using AI to automate or build monotonous work that you guys can put away from, and using human intel or bringing human intel into much more complex things. The fourth thing that I want to bring or put forth into this community is sharing is caring, right? It is important that you share your attack vectors and attack knowledges cross boundaries of your companies, cross boundaries of your nations, organization, industry, so that when your fellow person is attacked, you be aware of how that attack and attack methodology is, or you get to know about certain things, go ahead and share it to the other people. And that's one of the reason why Indian government as a whole is focusing on certain, is focusing on NCI, PC, and all those things. They're establishing various ISACs and ISOs so that intel is shared across domains, across various boundaries of the organization. And the last thing, or the fifth thing that I want to give you as a takeaway is, it is time that we move away from threat intelligence to defense intelligence. Now, this is a big statement because I know there are people and organizations that have not yet stepped into threat intelligence or are not using intel-driven operations, and that's one of the reasons we saw in Ukraine's power grid attack, where sandworm being infected, they did not patch the system. The attack pattern was the same, and in 2016, the same methodology was used to attack again. That's one. Second thing is eternal blue. We know how eternal blue works. We have been seeing a trail of eternal blue across multiple attack vectors. If we don't leverage this intel driven operations, we are going to have a big hard time, right? And it is high time that we move away from threat intelligence into defense intelligence. That is not just giving IOCs for consumption, but rather giving actionable or implementable solutions. That is, rather than indicators giving rather than indicators giving sim rules and EDR rules, cross the boundary so that they can go ahead and quickly implement those implementable solutions. So that those are the five key takeaways that I want you to go ahead from this session. Concluding down, it's time to questions, but I thank you for hearing me out so far. Uh, my name is again Jomon. I thank Ravi sir and AICTE for giving this platform. And all the videos that you saw behind the scene was my colleague Ashik, who is the security researcher and who has invested significant amount of time in getting the systems up and running, and ensuring the videos are recorded and all. So shout out to Ashik as well. And now the floor is open to questions. I'm not sure if we have time for questions, but the floor is open to questions at this point in time.
Yeah, any question from the participants? You can raise your hand, or maybe you can write in the chat box. When will the exam start? Okay, you wait for it. Okay. Okay, Joman, I have one question.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Yeah. What is the position of our cyber police if I compare with some benchmark other countries' cyber police? I would say, like how good they are in solving this kind of attack, financial attack, mostly.
Okay, that's a very good question, and I am happy and proud to say that our government has been investing, pumping in crores and crores of amount towards cybersecurity. While cybercrime is very complex, you might be very well aware of IC4, right? Which is a central cybercrime,
Right.
cybercrime, SOC center that we have. And not just that, you have SEBI, you have CERTIN, you have NCIPC, and what they all do is they all have focused on implementing and enforcing, security at, organization level. For example, HDFC or ICICI Bank. It is necessary that HDFC and ICICI Bank have a SOC so that कल को और आज को मेरे अकाउंट से there's a UPI fraud that happened with me. I call up 1930. I register a complaint. Right? The cybercrime police will immediately, the nodal officer will immediately reach out to the XYZ, bank that my transaction happened. They will call out to a person there and they will lock. If it is done within 4 hours, which is called as the golden hours, if it is within 4 hours, any transaction that has been done can be controlled and can be reversed. But it is very important to do so. So, and with us heading ahead as a global power, right, heading towards as this thing, you might all be aware of how UPI boomed during Corona, right? Which means it not just the technology that we built, it also there's a backstory to it. We are also working towards securing the technology. And I would be happy to say that yes, protecting 1.2 billion people is a mammoth task, right? Our problem statement multiplies by 1.2 billion. It's not 1x, it's not 2x, it's 1.2 billion x. So our infrastructure at this time is limited, but our technology advancement are there. And I hope in next few years we reach a position where we are at par with the global technologies. But yes, at this point in time, we are heading into that path. I hope that answers.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. No problem.
I also
Sir,
thank Mr. Ashik. Thank you.
Sir, please see chat box also. There are questions.
No, I don't think there is a question, sir.
There is one question: which companies are providing exclusive cyber security tools for IoT devices?
Yeah. I see there. So I know of a company called as CyberX, which is an Israeli-based company which provides security tools for IoT devices, but not protection, right? It helps you identify your critical systems. It helps you identify if there are vulnerabilities in the critical systems. But there are not particular, there are limited set of technologies that is giving holistic security per se to the software. Like for example, I as a bank, I might have firewalls and things to secure my environment. But because this is an ICS, there are very limited technologies developed and available. The remediatory methods are there, but one company, one solution fitting all is at this point in time not there.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other participants have any question? No question.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
sir. One group photo, sir. Please
Oh.
turn on your camera.
Oh, okay.
Oh. Please turn on your camera. This is last photograph, means with expert.
There is a
So, Dr. Jareb is also present. Thank you.
thank you, sir.